Hello, Garland Nixon here. Well, I'm back after a week or so of being out in the wilderness, but I'm back and we're going to talk about what's going on from Romania to the Trump election, France, Germany. There is a problem with neoliberalism that's starting to rear its ugly head. Let's talk. Hello, Garland Nixon here, and I am back in front of the camera here. The last week or so, I was out of town, getting my act together, searching the sky every day. Where are those nuclear missiles here? Where's this mushroom cloud? Well, luckily, no nuclear missiles, no mushroom cloud so far today. But at any rate, so let's talk. Well, what we're seeing now, in my opinion, is the inevitable meltdown of the neoliberal phenomena, the neoliberal era, as it were, right? Which we can go through various eras politically. The what we'll consider the growth of fascism, right, all the way up until the 40s. Here's what I would argue: we had colonialism, which is a form of fascism, right? Let's face it, in my opinion, it's going around the world, overthrowing countries and taking all of their stuff and turning the people into virtual slaves, either physical slaves, mental slaves, economic slaves, stealing all their stuff, right? You had all of that. You had the old 1860 something conference in, I believe it was Belgium, may be wrong, where they decided how they're going to divide Africa up, right? You had of course, as I said, the really outright and open fascist era where you had like General Franco and Mussolini, and you had Hitler, etc., who were pretty open, good old school fascists. And one would argue there was a transformation after World War II where there was more of a hidden fascism, where it went from really, hey, we're just bad guys, and it's who we are, it's what we do, to an argument that we're the good guys stopping the bad guys. And by doing that, and in order to do that, we got to do bad things, right? And a lot of hidden stuff. So from the 40s until, say, the late 70s, you had a different era where the US was extremely dominant. It's you could look at the violence that the US perpetrated, the overthrowing of governments, lots of terrible things. But at home, the economy was doing well. One might argue on the backs of all the countries that we were overthrowing and stealing all their resources. And Americans and Westerners and in Europe really felt that things were going well. Europe was being rebuilt after the war. Everybody in the West was kind of living off of at least the U.S. empire and its vassals were living and growing off of the U.S.'s dominance, right? And at the same time, the U.S. built an economic infrastructure, things like the IMF and the World Trade Organization and the World Bank, and it built and SWIFT system. It built an economic infrastructure so that it could dominate. And the plan was complete, total, and permanent domination of the world, right? That was the plan: economic domination, political domination, and of course, in order to do that, kinetic, violent, military domination. So that's what was happening. You had all of these bases, and there was two types of bases. There were the bases that were built all over the world, the traditional bases, but then there were the mobile bases. You've heard the terms of Israel, regarding Israel. You've heard the term our unsinkable aircraft carrier, right? Well, that implies that an aircraft carrier is a sinkable is a base. It's a mobile base, but whether it's Israel or Taiwan or whatever, it was also been referred to as an unsinkable aircraft carrier. Now they didn't mention that with Taiwan, but the same Ukraine. That was supposed to be the same principle with Ukraine. And an unsinkable aircraft carrier sitting there right at, a knife at Russia's throat, a political and military knife at Russia's throat. So all these things are going on. The U.S. is going to dominate, and its allies are going to dominate also. Now, well, they got greedy. Not greedy, but they decided to go back to a kind of a feudalism in the late 70s, right? And this was neoliberalism. And it wasn't hard for them to do it because they had already brainwashed Westerners into believing that a system that benefited the rest, benefited the rich would benefit everyone else because they were doing okay, because they were doing pretty good, because there was industry, there was factory, there was jobs. So when the people who ostensibly were providing that dynamic said, this is what we need to do to continue and improve this dynamic, the people said, okay, right? There was jobs, there was factories, there were steel mills. So the people in power, the ruling elite said, let's do X and go in this direction. Boy, that'll really benefit you. And I think that the people, the workers, the people were like, well, we're doing pretty good right now. So, okay, we'll listen to these people. Well, that was an intro neoliberalism. And it was basically taking what was going on, which was an economy to benefit the rich, and putting it on steroids. Also, one could argue, as has been said, for every revolution, there's a counter revolution, right? It was somewhat of a counter revolution because you had workers who were building unions and things like that, and creating a dynamic where the workers could get a decent pay, where the workers could get good benefits, things of that nature. They were doing okay. And this was the wealthy, super rich class saying, how can we push back? How can we reverse this? And since we got lots of power, it ain't going to be hard. And one of the things they did was simply moved back towards feudalism, right? They moved really towards an economy wherein the benefits are created for the wealthy, and they had this it's, to me, let me say this, it's amazing how gullible people are, because here's the argument for neoliberalism at the foundation of it. If in fact an economy is created to drive wealth all to the richest people, right, make the rich people richer, that it will, quote, trickle down. Remember that? Trickle down. So if we got people who are rich and we got working class people and everything like that, right? So what we're going to do is take the money from these working class and from the poor. We're going to give it to the rich. And somehow, we don't know how, but maybe it's magic, that it'll trickle down to the rest, right? So it's going to go there and it's going to trickle down to the working class. The problem was the working class were already doing okay. They didn't need a change. They didn't need it to trickle down. They didn't need anything. They just needed to kind of keep doing what they were doing, except the only real problem was the working class didn't know that what they were benefiting off was going the leadership of their country going around the world, dominating the rest of the world and stealing their resources. But that notwithstanding all of that, the plan comes up. And I would argue, late 70s, it started when they were going after unions. But in the early 80s, 81, 82, in the United States, there was a whole new kind of legislation that was passed. And it was deregulating the savings and loans, right? And it was Chuck Schumer, 2 Democrats and a Republican. And it was this: we're going to deregulate the savings and loans, and that way the savings and loans, if we just leave these powerful rich people, if we leave them out to do whatever they want to, it'll trickle down to everybody else, right? That what we need to do is we need to get rid of regulations, and we need to free these entrepreneurs, right? We need to free the capitalist class, the rich class. It was working off of kind of a moral argument, a moral position too, that was kind of like, people are rich because they're smarter and harder working, and if you just get out of their way, the government's stopping them from even really fully realizing their potential. And all we got to do is get the government out of the way, and they will fully realize their potential. And when they do, everybody will benefit, because the entire economy will grow if we just get out of the way and have less regulations and less government. Keep in mind something. There's a certain amount of power out there, one could argue. There's power. And if the government doesn't have the power, if you take the power from the government, it's going to go somewhere when they sure ain't letting it go back to the people. So as you weaken the government, the power goes to the corporations, right? The power goes to the billionaires. And anyone could argue that's not true. You can make that argument, but where are we now? You can make that argument, but how did Citizens United in the United States, where money equals speech, and that means the more money you have, the more speech you have, and we ended up with people who are running for office having to raise millions and millions of dollars, and whoever raises the most money wins most of the time. So the bottom line is this self-serving racket of neoliberalism for the billionaires and the rich just served to do exactly what any reasonable person would guess that it would do. It weakened the governments. It strengthened the billionaire class, the rich class. It created, it focused and concentrated the wealth in the hands of a few very wealthy people and in corporations. And as the perfect example, look at the news. The news is just a few corporations with spitting out nothing but corporate propaganda, but government powerful corporate propaganda. And that's what should be expected with neoliberalism. So we get to where we are now, and that is the natural course of things have taken, the natural course of things have resulted in getting us to a point where the government is weakened. And keep in mind something, this is not a pro-government or an anti-government rant, but this is obvious. If the government, if something's going on and you want it changed, in theory, maybe not in practical application, maybe so, I don't know. In theory, you can vote someone out, you can vote someone in. You can say to a member of Congress, this is all in theory, hey, we want you to do X, and the member of Congress doesn't do it, you can vote the person out, you can vote them in. You can protest, you can scare the people in government into doing something. In theory, the way government works. I'm not saying it works that under neoliberalism, it doesn't, but here's my point. In theory, you can make changes to the government, you can have input to the government. So if the government has power and you don't like it, you can vote someone out or vote someone in. You can put pressure on the government, right? If a corporate billionaire has power, it's hard, it's very difficult for you to have input there. So once all of the power leaves the government and goes in the hands of a few billionaires, then now what happens is the average person, the average voter, the average citizen doesn't have any input. And the truth is people will say, we don't have any input. But I think we're seeing that we really do if we get pissed enough. And my example would be a couple of examples, Trump. Now, this is not to say anything positive about Trump, that he's good. He's a neoliberalism on steroids. But my point is the system didn't want Trump in my opinion. You may disagree. And the system got something it didn't want it. And now the system is reeling in a number of ways because this is not the guy they wanted. Because while he is, yes, he's neoliberalism on steroids and he's going to do lots of things that the neoliberals want, no question. And the warmongers want, no question. He'll do some things that they don't. And even if he doesn't, they fear that he'll do some things that he wants. So they didn't want him for a number of reasons. And they got him. Look at what's happening in Romania right now. Romania, there's a guy who is a right-winger, who is anti-NATO, who is opposed to all of this crazy Ukrainian neoliberal warmongering, and this guy's winning. And right now the system's in there trying to stop him. Tbilisi, Georgia, what's going on there? Georgia Dream, a system that's not pro-NATO, that about, party by any stretch of the imagination, and they won. And now the usual color revolutions, they're trying to, do that to the West is trying to do that to stop him, the U.S. empire, and they're not having the kind of luck they really need. Macron, political crisis. Germany, political crisis, right? What's going on here? Political crisis. People think they don't have any power whatsoever, but if they didn't have any power, you wouldn't have any political crisis, would you? They would just simply, the people in power would simply do what they want, and there'd be no crisis. They wouldn't be worried about whether Trump or Harris. Harris would have won by a landslide. Macron, he wouldn't have anything. What about Starmer? Starmer's in deep and serious trouble. Why? Neoliberalism. Neoliberalism gives you, as they say, 6 in one hand, half a dozen in the other. So what happens? Oh my gosh, the Tories are terrible. They got to go. Yes. Oh, we'll put Keir Starmer and Labor in. Oh boy, Labor has been rebuilt. Not saying that what's his name, Jeremy Corbyn, was by any stretch of imagination great, but the system didn't want him. And when it looked like he may win, what did they do? They pulled out all the stops, the BBC, everything. In fact, people forget that Mike Pompeo said during the Trump administration, again, neoliberalism. Trump was a neoliberal guy. Pompeo said that if it looked like Jeremy Corbyn was going to win, that the U.S. wouldn't wait around for that to happen. In other words, we're not going to allow the UK to have voters to choose their own person. If they choose the wrong person, they can't do it. We'll step in and stop them. That's what they, Bernie was going to win in 2016. What did they do? They stepped in to stop him. Recently, what happened when the whole neoliberal machine didn't want Trump? The UK was over here returning the favor. Well, hell, we got to all get together and stop Trump. Right. The German Greens were saying to what's her name? Jill Stein, you got to drop out so Trump won't win. The neoliberal machine, it knows that this machine knows that it's interconnected. And it knows that if one loses, everybody loses. So what you're seeing now is the political crisis, which says to me, in opposition to the naysayers, to the people that say it'll never work, we're all doomed, it says to me that really the people have a lot more power than they think if they decide to exercise it. That they can lie, they can cheat, they can steal, the people in power. But if the overwhelming numbers of the citizens are hurting enough and they get angry enough, then we can do things to make a change. Now, again, one of the issues of neoliberalism is the neoliberalism loves to give you something that looks like a change and it isn't. So you're like, when you vote out the Tories and you vote in Keir Starmer, hooray, we defeated the Tories and we got Keir Starmer. A couple weeks later, months later, they're like, holy crap, we got the same thing. Duh, most of us knew you were going to get the same thing. And I imagine most Brits knew they were too, but they didn't have another option. So now they're coming to a real interesting period. And that's to me, the important period. And a lot of the other Western countries are heading in that direction. Okay. And that is the real, say, crash of neoliberalism. 1 second here. The real meltdown of neoliberalism, which we're heading towards, which we're not there. The first part of it is Keir Starmer, Trump, things like that. Or maybe the guy in Romania. I don't know that much about him. So the first part of the meltdown is the people pick somebody that the system doesn't want. But that's still, not Keir Starmer, for God's sake, but somebody that the system doesn't want. Say a Trump or whoever, right? The system doesn't want this person, but the person still has strong neoliberal inclinations. Somebody said Jill Stein is a Democrat. Yeah, Jill Stein's was there. She gave people something else to vote for as a protest vote. I got lots of issues with Jill Stein, but she gave just another third party place as a protest vote. So that's all that was. People who wanted a protest vote voted for Jill Stein, and good for protest votes. At any rate, so part one of the meltdown is when you reach for something different, and now these people voted for Trump or whatever, and they think they got something different. They do in a way, but in other ways they don't. So Trump's going to go with the neoliberal way of doing things. And let me just make it clear. Part one is you reach for Trump hoping you got something different, or you vote for whatever, hoping you have something different. That's still but you got something that's still part of the neoliberal machine. Part two is frustration and futility. And that's what the UK is rapidly getting towards, right? And that is when you get to the point where you say, we voted for this, and the traditional thing that we have was horrible. We voted for something different because we thought we were going to get a change. And that's when you stare and you look in the mirror, you stare into the mirror and you say, my God, the system is not offering me an option. The traditional parties that are here. If you're in the UK, what the hell do you do? Keir Starmer lost. I mean, won and you lost, right? You won and you lost at the same time. I've always said, my dad used to have a saying, and he put it either both ways, even when you win, you lose, or even when you lose, you win. And he would, and just kind of making the point of, there's two sides to every victory or every loss, right? My point being, so now the people in the UK are where, in my opinion, are rapidly getting to where they need to be, which is the second stage of neoliberal meltdown. The first stage is we're angry, we're voting out the Tories, and in comes Keir Starmer. The second stage is, holy crap, we got Keir Starmer, and what we got is the same, if not worse, right? And now you have to start deciding how you're going to address this. What are my options now? The traditional parties, the traditional political options that were put in front of me ain't working. What now? And I think we'll get there with Trump, because Trump's coming out, and to me, it's inevitable. Well, here's the thing: it's inevitable because the people that have been put forward for you are the traditional thinkers, are the ones who are in some ways still the gatekeepers for neoliberalism, right? Trump is coming in, or Trump-like people are still going to push the same options for change. What we got to do is double down on neoliberalism. That's what Trump tends to do. In a lot of ways, he doubles down on neoliberalism. What Trump's position usually is this: I don't want war with the big guys. I don't want to do these stupid wars that's going to get us nuked and get us all killed. I don't think Trump wants war with Russia or China. He don't wants a big war. I don't think Trump wants a major war. I think what Trump wants is, he wants to bully the little guys and bully people in a way that's not a physical or kinetic bullying, right? He doesn't want to blow you up and attack you. What he wants to do is sanction you. It's still the same mentalities that says the U.S. is the big bully on the block, and the way that we get things done, the way that we get people to do what we want, is to push them around. You're going to do this. I mean, think of how stupid this is. One of the things that Trump said was BRICS, right? So what's going on with BRICS? BRICS is a bunch of countries who said, now, it may have been something different when it started, it may not, but it started off with a bunch of countries saying, look, where it is now, a bunch of countries saying, look, our economic opportunities are being severely limited by the hegemonic presence of the U.S., and the U.S. is using the dollar as a weapon. It's using the dollar for control. It's using the dollar for modern day colonialism and imperialism and all the other ism words that you want to use. And we need other options. We need to build an alternative infrastructure. If you remember, after 1945, the U.S. built a huge economic infrastructure so it could dominate the world. IMF, WTO, World Bank, SWIFT, on and on and on, right? So it was basically, we need to build some alternative infrastructure, economic infrastructure options for countries that are being pushed around and being held back by U.S. Economic hegemony. So what happens? Trump says, oh my gosh, they're leaving the dollar. They're leaving the dollar. Now, if you remember, when Trump was running, what did he say? He said, look, what we need to do is get rid of these sanctions. We need to get rid of this stuff. We need to save the dollar and get rid of all sanctions. We need to stop sanctioning Russia, blah, 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 which, of course, if you know anything about it, Trump, you got to understand that when he's running, he'll say whatever he needs to say. He's an ad guy. He's advertising himself. And so he'll say the things that people want to hear. Now that he's in, he's saying, here's the way to save the dollar: economic bullying, neoliberalism, right? We're going to push everybody around. Neoliberalism is a very aggressive, but I'll put it like this: a militaristic, normally, Trump, I don't think wants to be as militaristic. He will be somewhat militaristic in a lighter way, not a heavier way, not in a full clash way with other countries in a full war. But I think that what he wants to do now, what he's saying now is, if you want to get off the dollar and BRICS wants to make some changes, we'll stop you by putting 100% tariffs on your country. So what we're going to do is we're going to punish you. We're going to use an economic punishment. Think about this. The people are saying we need new economic infrastructure because the current economic infrastructure is used to punish and control us. Donald Trump says, if you try to do that, we'll use our economic infrastructure to punish and control you. If you try to get away and stop us from punishing and controlling us by taking defensive economic measures, because, try to punish and control you. If you take defensive economic measures to escape our punishment and control, we will use more economic measures of punishment and control. It's boneheaded as can be. It's the old, if I yell at you and you don't do what I want, the only thing I know how to do is yell louder. If you still don't do what I want, I'll yell louder. So Trump's just simply doubling down on neoliberalism, doubling down on domination. It's domination of physical and kinetic domination. Will blow you up, will overthrow your government, will kill you, to economic domination. Now, don't get me wrong, Trump's still good with overthrowing governments and things like that, using, clandestine methods. We'll overthrow your government. We will punish you economically. We'll use this infrastructure to do the very thing that you're trying to escape from. I think we can understand how that's going to work out. Meanwhile, as Donald Trump and Donald Trump particularly, and his administration are set to double down on the neoliberal economic hegemonic policies that piss people off and that are driving them away from Western domination. As he's set to do that, the current neoliberals are doubling down on the only thing they know, which is militaristic. Right? They're like, oh my God, we're going to be out in a couple of months. Did we miss any wars? Well, we really didn't get the war we wanted in Syria. Okay, we'll get it done. We only got 2 months, for God's sake. Open another front against Russia. It's the only thing neoliberalism knows, including Donald Trump, is to double down. People keep saying the neocons don't have any a reverse gear. The Duran says that, and they're right, because it's not just the neocons as individuals. It's neoliberalism is a system that was created by, of, and for the powerful and the rich and the wealthy. And their concern is people are on to us. And if this thing starts to turn around, then the working class and the masses will start to get some power, and we can't have that. And oh, by the way, as evil and vicious and brutal as we are to dominate them and put them down, we're afraid that they'll be just like us and they'll come back and cut our heads off. And they could be right because of the things that they're doing. They could be right at some point. That's the way things, happen. People always say, you hear a lot of people say, look, we're going to have a civil war, implying that the people are going to fight each other. I think neoliberalism has already created the dynamics for a civil war, and the civil war is not between the people and the people, not various factions. It's not a Bonapartist civil war where factions of the ruling elite grab huge factions of the public, of the masses, and they clash together. The people, the masses put on gray uniforms and blue uniforms, and the ruling elite say, go kill each other, and they clash on the battlefield at Gettysburg, and they die by the tens of thousands. No, there's the civil war is ongoing, and it's a different kind of civil war. And I think there's a couple of things. Part of the civil war, you can argue, is between factions of the ruling elite, where the so-called neocons, where the kinetic neocons, where the kinetic fascists who say we want to start wars between the major nuclear powers or anybody. We're just going to go around the world and go to war everywhere. You have those that are completely unhinged warmongers. And they're kind of battling with the Trump type people who say, look, we want to do it a different way. We want to use a different kind of domination to change things. And there's an understanding that Trump has, I think. The Trump faction has a different understanding that the knuckle draggers don't have. Trump and his people understand they ain't going to be able to deliver, don't get me wrong. But they do. Some civil war, Garland, you mean revolution? Not really. Not really. I don't mean revolution here. I think you get there, but that's not what's going on right now. The Trump faction of the ruling elite understands something. They understand that you have to pacify the masses somewhat, right? You got the Biden type neocons, right? These are the people who say the masses will do what we want or we'll pound them into the ground. The masses will do what we want or we will do sanctions, literally. What did we see during COVID? We saw sanctions against Americans, sanctions against Canadians, sanctions against people. They will fine you if you don't do what we want. We will lock you in the house. We will do all kinds of things if you don't do what we want, right? The only thing they know is tell the public to do what they want, what we tell them to do. And if they don't, we'll pound them into the ground. We'll arrest them. We'll throw them off of social media. We will continue to use the iron fist on the masses and we'll crush them until they do what we want. The Trump faction, I think, of neoliberals says, look, we have to deliver some for the masses. We got to give them some crumbs. I think that's the only difference. The Trump people are like, look, man, the people are upset over some cultural issues, right? The whole woke thing. We have some issues with that. The people have some issues culturally with that stuff, and they need to have some input here. And it's not going well. And we're starting to see the counter revolution against the woke cultural stuff. I think the Trump people, though they can't deliver on it, realize that when it comes to jobs and economic, people are really struggling and suffering. So they start by at least acknowledging that, right? If you look at the discussion with the Biden administration, what did they say? People were like, we're hurting. The Biden administration said, well, all you need to do is go to our website and look at these pie charts and graphs that we have, and you'll find that you're actually doing well. In other words, just gaslight them. The people said, we're not doing well. Yeah, you're doing great. I've had callers and radio shows. The problem is, I had a little caller literally call in and say, the problem is that people are actually doing good. They're doing better than they think. And the prices are going up, but so are their wages and blah, blah, blah. So that was, look, just tell the people they're wrong and they're doing well and just disregard, gaslight them. Who cares? I'm doing fine. I'm rich. I'm doing fine. We'll tell them they're doing fine and who cares? No empathy towards them whatsoever. Nothing. Who cares? Screw them. Tell them to shut up. And if they don't like that, we'll slam them to the ground. Where the Trump people basically say, we got to acknowledge their pain. We have to acknowledge the issues that they have. We've got to at least make a token effort to address these issues. And meanwhile, we'll still do the things that are going to make us get richer and richer. With Trump, you're still going to get the tax cuts for the billionaires. Trump's still going to say, we need the strongest military in the world. I think he said one time, we got a $2 trillion military. Again, this argument, neoliberal argument that benefits the military industrial complex, that says, this is what it implies. The more money that you spend on your military, the more powerful your military is, right? One of the things that we've been always, one of the things from a military perspective that we're, again, and this is another part of neoliberalism that's collapsing. There was a dynamic, I'll put it a different way. And the dynamic that we were taught to understand in the United States is judge a military by how much money you spend on it. That just tells you how powerful it is. How much money you spend on it determines how powerful your military is, right? So we would say we spend more money than the next 8 militaries combined, next 8 countries combined on military, right? And that meant that we had the most powerful military because we spent the most money. That's what it was. That's what it was supposed to mean. That's what we were taught. Hey, who's got the most powerful military? That's easy. Let's look. U.S. spends the most. We spend 867 billion. What about China? They spend 252 billion. What about Russia? I don't know, 60, 80 billion. What that meant was we spend 80 billion, 800 billion as opposed to 80 billion by Russia. That means that we're 10 times more powerful than them. That was the neoliberal measure. How much do you spend? The military industrial complex loved that because all they had to do was keep raising prices. They could sell us a missile that cost them 100,000 to make, and they could charge us 2 million. And not only would we accept that, we would be happy, and we would interpret that to mean the missile was better. Why? Because a $2 million missile has to be way better, right? 20 times better than a $100,000 missile. It has to be. The technology has to be 20 times better. Everything has to be 20 times faster because it costs 20 times as much. So it worked for the military industrial complex. The problem is it doesn't work on the battlefield. So while our military industrial complex went stagnant because all they had to do was charge more, they didn't have to really innovate. They could take the same missile that they were selling for $500,000 and jack the price up to $2 million, and everybody would say, "Well, wow, it's 4 times it's technologically been improved by 4 times over because they raised the price by 4 times." Meanwhile, the other countries were going in a different direction, and what they were saying is, "We don't have as much money." And we can't spend as much money, and we have no reason to spend as much money because we haven't created a dynamic in which we judge the power of our military by how much it costs. So we will have to get the best technology we can for the cheapest price that we can, and so they ended up being more effective. Right? They ended up creating more for less. So you ended up people building a drone that costs $10,000 or $20,000 that doesn't require a pilot, that doesn't require a whole lot. You aim it and fire, and it goes to where it's going, and it blows up. And in order for us to stop it, we got to use a $2 million missile. Well, boy, so what happens is this: we got what we wanted. We got an expensive military, and we could interpret that as being a more powerful military. They got what they wanted. They got a cheap military that was effective, because in the end, all it matters is it effective? Does the weapon you have work? And can you create enough of those to defeat your enemy who can create plenty of his? Right. So ultimately, if I can create a $20 million, a $2 million missile, that's pretty damn good. Okay, and I can make 100 of them. You can create a $20,000 drone that's not as good, but it's effective. But I can create 10,000 of them. Yeah, you can be out of missiles pretty quick, and my drones are going to be very, very effective. And so the concept of spending more means you have something better. Ran into the concept of spending less and building more of it means it ain't got to be better. All it's got to be is more. As who was it? Was it Stalin that said there's a quality has a quality of its own? And that's what we ended up with now. The quality of quantity. I like that. But at any rate, so again, all over the sphere, militarily, neoliberalism is collapsing, because the neoliberal dynamic of militarism is the more you spend, the better military you have. The traditional dynamic of military hardware, as it were, and effectiveness is it just has to work. It just has to work. It has to work in bad weather. It has to work in good weather. It has to work in mud. It has to work in whatever. And ultimately, you have to have people motivated to use it, and you have to have enough of them that you can continue to industrially the industrial capacity to generate the things. So I got something cheap, I got something effective, and I can make a lot of them. Neoliberalism, I got something very expensive. I got something that is effective, but I can't make but so many of them because it's extremely expensive. The military dynamic of an industrial dynamic of neoliberalism is crashing into the effectiveness of traditional military economics, traditional industrial economics, and it can't win that one. And bit by bit, people are starting to realize that the Ukraine conflict really exposed it. And what happened, I think, then is countries like Iran said, wow, that works. Let's double down on it. Let's build more and more drones. Let's build more and more unmanned missiles and unmanned things that we can attack. Let's increase our missile technology. Let's increase our drone technology. Let's increase our industrial capacity to build these things. And the West, the U.S. empire's military strategy is to build extremely expensive high-tech fighters and to use those to dominate the airspace. And the Russians showed something else. I can build fairly inexpensive anti-aircraft systems and build a lot of them, and you can no longer dominate my airspace, and you're in deep and serious trouble, and I can stop everything that you're sending. So I'll just keep doing those. And Iran's figured that out, and a lot of other people have figured it out. And now there's ways to thwart traditional military domination. So the neoliberal political model is collapsing because people are realizing, hey, we can still do some things to change the politicians that we don't want. Now, as I said, they're running into the second phase of the neoliberal problem, which is neoliberalism only gives you certain options. And even when you win, you lose, so that you put somebody in there who still has a neoliberal mindset, and you continue to get a lot of the same thing. But then there's the second phase of neoliberal counter-revolution, right? We're not there yet, but we're getting there in some places. And of course, militarily speaking, reducing your industrial capacity, because the only thing you do is try to make a greater profit, and interpreting something that costs more as being better, and interpreting a military that spends more as being the more effective military, when in the real world, effectiveness is what's important, not cost, has run into the traditional military mindset. And there's no way to build a bunch of expensive missiles, and when you can't build many of them, and win against somebody who's building cheap alternatives and taking your missiles out, increasing their, exhausting your missile supply, and increasing their technology, because what they're doing actually does drive innovation, right? Believe it or not, when you don't have as much money, and you have to make things that work and defend your life, defend yourself, defend your country, that is something that drives innovation. In fact, the innovation in the military technology now is coming from what? Russia. Russia has done what? They pretty much nationalized their military industrial complex, where China nationalized their military industrial complex. Iran, theirs is nationalized. China's already nationalized, but Iran is pretty much nationalized. So the countries where the government controls the military industrial complex are the ones that are getting the most innovation. Well, that goes against the whole neoliberal mindset, right? These entrepreneurs out there will drive innovation. Russia, China, Iran, those are all state run, and they're driving the innovation. The reason they're driving the innovation is, number one, because they do have a motive to defend their lives and defend their countries, defend themselves. Number two, because it's not profit driven. They don't need to make a lot of money. They need to be effective. In fact, they need to be effective for less money. So in the sphere of military technology, it certainly appears that, not appears, the results that we're currently seeing is that the countries where the government controls the military industrial complex are currently far more effective at innovation and technological advancement than the neoliberal countries. Clearly, right now, you can interpret that any way you want to, but that's what's happening. To me, I don't know another argument. I don't know any way to even defend anything else. That's what's going on now. Now, let's talk about cultural. Culturally speaking, neoliberalism is being exposed. The whole woke thing, what was that about? It was about the ruling elite saying that we will drive the cultural discussion. We will drive the cultural changes, right? And that was, number one, we want a culture that's highly sexualized, extremely sexualized, highly sexualized. And that was, we're going to talk about the sexuality of everyone. Are you heterosexual? Are you bisexual? Are you male? Are you female? Or blah, blah, blah. And we want to blur all of those lines as much as possible, right? That was the ruling elite. Let's blur all the lines of sexuality and have a highly, highly sexualized culture where this is all about what sex whatever you want to use it. Your sexual, you can use the word preferences, inclinations, proclivities, whatever you want to use, but it's going to be it's about sex, right? And it was, let's promote that gay is great, and anyone who doesn't want to have that discussion hates gay people. If you say, look, I don't want to talk about people's sexual proclivities, inclinations, how they were born sexually, preferences, whatever term you want to use, I don't want to talk about it all the time. It was, no, I don't hate gay people. I got nothing against gay people, but I don't want to talk about it all the time. I don't want to talk about the kind of sex someone has. And I don't want those types of things to be discussed regularly and promoted in the sphere of education and children, right? Let's leave that alone. If somebody's gay, let's not discriminate against them, and they can't buy a house, they can't get a loan, they can't do this or that. No, no, no. See, what happened is this. The interpretation is, if I am not for all of the kind of woke stuff regarding the sexuality part of it, if I say, well, I may have some problems with drag queen story time, I want to have a discussion about that. The fact that you want to have the discussion means that you're evil. It means that you hate gay people. No, 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 we can't talk about that. Yeah, okay, you feel it's a good idea. I may feel it's a bad idea. You may feel it's a good idea. I may feel it's a bad idea. But we need to have this discussion, and I need to lay my thoughts on the line. You lay your thoughts on the line, and we'll put it out into the public sphere of discussion and see where it goes. No, you're evil if you do that. You do not have the option of opposing or even creating a sphere for discussion. We need to have a discussion about these things. No, you're evil. And if you try to do that, you must be punished, which is cancel culture. Cancel culture is what? It's punishment. Cancel culture is punishment. When they say cancel, what is that? It's punishing. If Garland says something that is not allowed by the ruling elite who have decided that they control our culture, right? If Garland says something that they deem is not allowed, out of bounds, then Garland must be punished. So now you're punished for attempting to have a discussion about things, even attempting to have a discussion about things, much less in opposition. If someone says, I'm opposed to this or that culturally, they should have the option of saying that. I may agree with them, I may not, but give them the option of saying that. But neoliberalism is very totalitarianism. Neoliberalism is extremely dominant, right? There's no discussion. There's no realm for a philosophical or intellectual discussion. It's dominant. I say this is the way things are. Darn you, and you better accept it. And that's the way things are going to be. And when you say, well, culturally, I don't know, maybe I have a different feeling. Oh, you must be punished, thrown off of, deplatformed, all of the above. Okay. So culturally, I've heard it say that negative feelings don't go away; they just express themselves in other ways, right? You push a spring down, you keep compressing a spring. At some point, it's going to boing, it's going to bounce out, right? So what we're getting now again is, for every revolution, there's a counter revolution. This so-called cultural revolution, where it's like, okay, now we're going to do a lot more promoting, take up the trans and LGBTQ stuff, as that's the leading edge of our culture. That's at the front. That's the most important thing to discuss. That's the most important thing to promote. Where a lot of people felt, I don't want to talk about that or have a discussion or promote or not promote it. Just leave it alone. It's there. It exists. Leave it alone. Let it do what it's going to do. Let people who are gay or trans or whatever live their lives, blah, blah, blah. But we can say we won't discriminate against them, but the government shouldn't be promoting it or not promoting it. The government should just say, these kind of people are protected. If you want to discriminate against them, you can't discriminate against them. I'm sorry, that's illegal, but we're not going to promote any kind of a sexual lifestyle or demote it, whatever it is, it's your life. So what happened? It's so promoted that, and of course, I got to add this, and a big part of that was what? It was entertainment. It was Hollywood. It was the movies. It was the news, which is entertainment, right? And it was the media. So the whole media system said, the government has decided we're going to promote this particular thing. And therefore, the news media, the movies, all of that said, okay, great. That's what we got to do now. The government has decided that culture is going in this direction. Boom, we got to do it. One of the results that we're seeing, one of the pushbacks that we're seeing is, and I mean, it's quite natural, people just aren't going to see the movies, right? I did a video about it called Woke Politics and the Isms, DEI in Hollywood, Masculine Women and Feminized Men, right? Blurring the line of masculinity and femininity and gender, traditional gender stuff. And basically, the movies were going always, like the new movies were all girl boss. The woman is a combination of things. Number one, you're going to have women as the superheroes or the cops or whatever. They're in charge of everything. Number two, they're going to be a diverse group of women, as they put it, meaning like the Miss Marvel or the Marvels, whatever it was, where you have one black woman, one white woman, and one Indian. And traditionally, let's be honest about this, traditionally, Hollywood had attractive people, right? People in good physical condition, they look good, they were attractive. And let's face it, it was entertainment. That's what people wanted to see. Hollywood has now gotten away from that. They don't need to be attractive. In fact, if they're attractive, that is if you put attractive women out there, that some way degrades women. I don't even understand that. But so you put people out there with no regard for whether or not they're attractive. And I'm not saying they got to be attractive. They don't have to be attractive, but they should be the best actors and actresses there. Not the best looking, the best that you can find, so that the movie's real good. The writers for the movies, the CGI people that do everybody, we need the best people that we can get so that we produce a really, really good movie. Hollywood has gone away from that to say, no, we're not going to focus on getting the best people we can get. We're going to focus on making sure that this movie aligns culturally with the neoliberal view of the world, which is what's important is that the writers are all a diverse group of women or whatever, that the lead heroes or whatever are a diverse group of women who could be attractive, preferably not. Right. And so you end up with a bunch of movies, and then people don't go see the movies. And then what do? You attack the people. You put out a movie, and if you've been paying attention to Hollywood, this is the way it works. You put out a movie, people don't go see the movie because it's not what they want, and it's not even a good movie. And then the stars and the directors all go on Twitter or Blue Sky, I guess now, and they attack the fans. They're a bunch of racist. Oh, you Star Wars fans are a bunch of racist scumbag pigs, right? So you put something out they don't want, you attack them for not wanting it. Now, might I add, look at what happened in, doesn't that bleed over into politics? Kamala Harris lost. Did the people who were supporting Kamala Harris say, oh, perhaps we should do things differently? What we're doing doesn't work? Did they question themselves? No, they didn't. Listen to them. Oh, these darn Trump voters. Our country has gone down the toilet with a bunch of fascist, scumbag, racist, Nazi pigs, right? When they present a product, Kamala Harris and of course, more importantly than Kamala Harris, the way they governed for the last 4 years, and the people reject it, they don't question themselves. They say the people are lowlives. The unwashed people out here aren't smart enough, and they're not sophisticated enough to understand that they should have voted for us. We hate them. What about a movie? I remember a movie that was made, and I saw, and I think it was called The Cabin or something. And I saw an advertisement for this movie. And it was like, yes, a couple takes a young boy, their son, out into some cabin in the woods, and some evil force is trying to get them. Well, we've all seen that Cabin movie a million times, right? It may be a werewolf, whatever, and hopefully a werewolf. And as far as I'm concerned, that's the best movie, when people are out there and there's a werewolf howling, trying to tear them to pieces. You can't beat that, right? Well, I saw the advertisement. And then when the trailer, I thought, oh, I may see that. Maybe there's a werewolf or something really evil in the woods. Hooray! Let's maybe it's a remake of American Werewolf in London. And then when it came out, and it was like, and this couple, and it was two guys. The couple was two guys. And they had a son, and it was a gay couple. And I'm like, I'm not going to see this movie. Do I have anything against gay people? No. But I'm an old-fashioned guy, right? And if I went to see the movie and those two guys kissed, I'd be like, oh, God, I can't watch that. And look, first of all, I don't care if gay people do whatever they want. That's the kind of the definition of them being gay, right? I would imagine if some gay guy saw a movie and I was kissing a woman, he'd probably be grossed out. And he's got a right to. I don't care. He doesn't have to come see the movie, right? But me seeing a movie with two guys kissing ain't happening. And a lot of men understand. I know, a lot of men, if you say, hey, there's a movie with two guys kissing, a lot of us heterosexual men, I don't know why physically, it's not a mental reaction. If I'm just honest, me, I don't care. It's a physical reaction. I don't understand it. Maybe it's DNA or something like that. But if I saw that movie and those two guys kissed, I've seen a movie, advertisements, right? And there's these two guys holding hands. And, oh, God, I don't know if they're getting ready to, and then they spook. Oh, geez, no, I don't. Click, right? I don't know why. I don't dislike gay people. I don't have anything against them. But that kind of stuff gives me the creeps. It makes my skin crawl. You know what I mean? Like nails on a chalkboard. I don't understand why. Maybe somebody could say it, but it doesn't matter why. Bottom line is this. I wouldn't go and see that movie, and I'm just specifically telling you why, okay? And I'm guaranteeing you that there's a lot of guys who are like me. Maybe all of them wouldn't admit it. Maybe some of them would, who say, yeah, I get kind of creeped out by that stuff. Don't dislike the guys, not opposed to them, but I ain't paying to see that movie because it'd creep me out. And what do they do after the movie? Bombed, as we knew it would. The Americans are a bunch of sexist, scumbaggy pigs, and they won't go see the movies. They're not culturally advanced enough to understand that they should be watching these movies, and so they just attack us. And of course, that's the way it goes. But the problem is this. After a while, you get a pattern. And the pattern we're getting is Disney, whichever, or Marvel, or all of Hollywood releases their latest cultural exhibit of unattractive. I'm just being honest about this. I could care less. People won't like it. Doesn't matter to me. Unattractive, often people of limited talent who are performing in movies that were written and directed by people that don't seem to know what the hell they're doing, that the CGI was garbage, and we don't want to see it anymore. And that's all we get over and over and over again. And all of us out here who like and enjoy these kind of movies are coming to the conclusion that Hollywood is going to crash, that a lot of these movie studios are going to go out of business because they've taken a moral position that has nothing to do with making money. The moral position is we've got to stand up against, I don't know, the Trump people or the conservatives or even regular old Americans who are like, I'm not really down by that. I'd like a movie with some good looking people in it who know how to act. Is that too much to ask? Right? Most of us even look in the mirror and say, who would want to see a movie with me in it? No. Put a good-looking guy in it. I always say, what's the name? Idris Elba. There we go. Stick that guy in a movie. Here's a guy. You know what I mean? Tom Cruise. People like that. Tom Cruise get a little long in the tooth, but you get my point. Attractive people in a movie that's well written with lots of action, where you beat people up and blow things up, maybe some aliens. Hey, we can do this. And I'm in. We got a movie, Idris Elba versus Tom Cruise, and they're both aliens, and they got hot babes on either side of them, and they're trying to blow up a planet. Now, and there's werewolves on the planet. That's something like that. Guess what? That movie makes makes billions of dollars. That movie's going to do great. But we don't get that anymore. No, we don't get that. We get a diverse group of female girl bosses who are going around dominating men, and a bunch of feminized, weakened guys who look like the guys on the Jaguar advertisement. And then when we look at it and say we don't find that cool, it's not something we want to watch, then we get attacked as racist, sexist, scumbag, homophobic, transphobic pigs. Well, I'm just saying that economic model ain't gonna work long. And the Jaguars of the world, they're going out of business. Good. People are upset at Jaguar. Jaguar. Oh my God, I can't believe they did. No, it's a wonderful advertisement for Jaguar. It's exactly the advertisement that they should put out. If your country, if your company thinks like Jaguar, that's what you ought to do. And your company's going to go out of business exactly as it should go out of business. There's nothing wrong with that. It's like that's the Zen thing. Don't push back against an idiot who's dying to go out of business, right? So people get mad. Can you believe what Jaguar's doing? Yes. This is understanding neoliberal cultural issues and the neoliberal cultural meltdown and not pushing back against it. Don't get in the way of a wave. Stand in the ocean and waves are coming up. What, you think you're going to stop them? No, they're going to hit you. Whoa, ride the wave. Enjoy it. Go up and down. Put on your water wings. Just don't get eaten by a shark. Right? But enjoy it. And so when I saw the Jaguar advertisement, I talked about it, I just shook my head. So would you look at this? They got a bunch of people in here who look like the Teletubbies, has been said by many people, including me, with bright colors. They're all feminized men. They're all, you look at it, you're like, which of these are men and which of these are women? I'm not sure, right? These kind of androgynous bodies, no curves, everything's straight, right? No curves, no muscles, no nothing, everything's straight, bright colors, some weird music in the background, and they all walk exactly alike. And they all look, turn their heads at the same time. That's the mentality. Everybody has no race or sex, kind of, and they all do exactly the same thing at exactly the same way. It's exactly the opposite of what they're saying that they stand for. If they were actually doing what they stood for, you'd have a guy in a camouflage hunting outfit, you'd have a guy in a suit, you'd have a girl in a ballerina outfit. They all kind of got ballerina outfits, don't they? But you get my point. You'd have different people. But actually in advertising, that ain't what you do. You would look at it and you'd say, what kind of guy would drive this car or girl? And you'd put those kind of people together and you'd put them in the car and you drive this black Jaguar at night and they'd all get out and they'd be cool and everybody would want to be like them, right? Remember, there was for the people who forgot, back in Michael Jordan's days, they had this great advertisement, and everybody was watching Michael Jordan do these great moves and dunks, and it was, the advertisement was like, "Be like Mike. If I could be like Mike, I want to be like Mike." Right? It was like everybody was like, they watched Jordan. Man, I'd love to be able to fly through the air and dunk like Mike. I'd love to be able to throw a touchdown like Tom Brady. I'd love to be able to run up and down the field like whoever the hell, Ronaldo, Pele, you name it, right? It was a realization that that's the way people's mind work, and that's the way you want to sell stuff to them. Not neoliberalism. Neoliberalism drives the conversation. Neoliberal advertising, neoliberal culture doesn't say we understand the culture of the people, and therefore, we want to present to the people something that'll be attractive to them. Neoliberal culture says we want to drive the culture. We want to tell the people this is how you have to think and you will be punished. All who oppose, who push back must be punished. And that is economically collapsing in Hollywood. And dare I say, have you seen the news lately? The news after Trump is like, oh my God, we tried to tell people January 6th. We tried to drive this. January 6th. We tried to drive certain things. Trump is anti-trans and anti-this or that. We tried to drive the issues that people were going to vote on, and they rejected all of them. Now what? They don't know what to do. Oh my God, people are going to see Garland Nixon or the Duran or Jimmy Dore or Scott Ritter or Dialogue Works or whatever the hell. They're going to see something where they can choose. Whatever. They want to see what they can choose. We tried to. So what you got is this. You've got the neoliberal news media, the neoliberal Hollywood, etc., saying we're going to culturally drive the issues to the people and say you have to watch this, approve of this, disapprove of that, or you will be punished. And the people saying, we ain't buying into that, we're out. And now they're in flux. They don't know what to do. That whole cultural drive, and it's not just a cultural drive. It's not allowing a discussion of the cultural drive. It's when Garland talks about the movie and says, it kind of creeps me out. I didn't want to see that movie because guys could kiss and I don't want to see that, right? Instead of saying, you evil, racist, pig, scumbag, sexist, transphobe Garland Nixon, saying, why do you feel like that? And Garland can say, well, I don't really know. I'm just a man. I mean, a lot of guys feel like that. And maybe you look around and you say, well, we sure ain't going to sell a lot of movies like this. So maybe what kind of movie would you like? How about some werewolves and aliens? How about alien werewolves? Hey, we'll make a movie with alien werewolves. We are going to make, or you put movies out and you see, as they did in the past, you see the movies that sell and you clone them. Oh, wow, everybody loves a Star Wars kind of movie. How about we go with Battlestar Galactica and you make a fortune doing that? You find out what works and you imitate that. Nothing wrong with that. Some people oppose it. I don't. What is it? Imitation is the best form of flattery. But that's not what neoliberalism does. And now it is coming crashing down to earth. Reality is hitting. You tried to force people to do something, and guess what? And they're pushing back in all realms. Politically, as I said, the U.S. Now Trump's coming in. He's going to go neoliberal. But I'll say this: whether he can or not, I don't know. But Trump wants to. He wants to end both of the big conflicts. Whether he can, I don't know. That's a tall order. I would probably bet against it. But here's the thing about it: you can't end them if you don't want to end them, and you can't end them if you don't try. And I would say this: if you engage in diplomacy, right, you'll get somewhere. So I would say that while there's big problems so far with what the Trump people are saying about diplomacy, if they send people to Moscow and start talking to the Russians, there's a chance. If you want to, I think, in my opinion, Trump wants to turn down the volume on the current conflicts because I think he wants to focus on the U.S. economy. But he's going to have a neoliberal focus on the economy, so they're going to work anyway. But I'm just saying, let's say we'd rather not have the wars. Whether it works or not, I'm not going to promise you that. All I'm saying is this: all of this is a pushback. The wars, we're supposed to love war, right? We're everywhere you go, everywhere you drive around. You know what you'll see? And this is one thing I will be so happy the Ukraine war is over. All this blue and yellow bullshit. I was in Virginia Beach. They got the fire hydrants painted in Ukrainian blue and yellow. Fire hydrants as you go down the road. They got, I was at a campground. I went to this campground, a KOA, right? And the sign at the campground was in the Ukrainian blue and yellow all over the place. I've been noticing it for the whole time. And you probably have too. Every damn where you go. They're a building and they got blue and yellow here and there, blue and yellow on the sidewalk. Everywhere, the blue and yellow Ukrainian flag colors are just ubiquitous in this country. I mean, if you wanted to get rich before the conflict started, you just start selling blue and yellow freaking colored paint and blue and yellow stuff because they stuck it everywhere in a way to brainwash us. I'll be glad when that bull crap is gone. But at any rate, so the people's pushback against this war scared the crap out of them. They think they're going to get nuked, and they're right. The people are right. They'll get nuked if this keeps up. So the pushback against the neoliberal wars, the pushback against the cultural, the best way I can, the pushback against the ruling elite driving the cultural issues and punishing those who question them, as opposed to a more organic way of cultural development, right? The pushback, no, we'd rather have the development, the culture develop organically. And if there's some things around the edges that need to change, we can discuss that. If someone is discriminating against gay people and won't rent them an apartment, right? Well, that's a discussion that needs to be had, and that's not right. And maybe we need to find a way to address that. But if somebody else says, I'm not thrilled with the drag queen story time, it's reasonable for them to be not thrilled with it. And if you are in favor of it, that's a discussion we need to have without demonizing the person who's not thrilled with it. It doesn't mean that they hate gay people because they have an issue with that. Allow them their space to discuss it. Don't just blow them off. Right? And it is the wealthy and the ruling elite drive cultural changes, control cultural changes, and punish those who oppose their cultural changes. That is falling kind of flat. That ain't going to last long, and they're looking for a way around that. The pro-war proclivities of the ruling elite, people not happy with it. So politically, culturally, economically, neoliberalism creates poor people. It creates a gigantic working class of people who can't afford to buy the offerings, whether it's products or services, whatever. People can no longer afford to pay for the basic necessities of life and to buy the products and services that are created, by the neoliberal dynamic. Cars, right? The whole car industry is in collapse. Why? Go to a car dealer. You'll figure it out. Go to a car dealer right now. You want to buy a pickup truck? No problem. $75,000, $65,000, $75,000, $85,000. You want to buy a new Toyota 4Runner, which are coming out. The new 4Runners are coming out. They'll be paltry, $50,000. People don't have that kind of money. They can't afford to pay their rent. They can't afford it. So we now have a situation where people can't afford to buy the things that the traditional industries offer to keep themselves alive, so that people can work at some of those traditional industries. Ain't going over good. So what we're looking at is a meltdown of neoliberalism in real time, and a fast meltdown of it. People are like, well, it's imperial collapse. All we're saying, if people say if the empire is collapsing, if people, I'll put it like this: if you're like the U.S. empire is collapsing, neoliberalism is melting down. Right? Here's what I would say: we're all saying the same thing. So for someone to say the U.S. empire is collapsing, yes. If you say neoliberalism is melting down or collapsing, yes. I'll put it like this: if somebody says my computer died, my computer crashed, yes. What happened? The operating system crashed, seized up. The OS, the operating system, is corrupted, and therefore my computer's no good. It won't work. You could look at neoliberalism as the current iteration of the imperial operating system, the current iteration of it. And all they did was they took the same operating system and they went from dominating the world 1.0 to dominating the world 2.0. And I'll end up by saying this, because what we had here was a system that was working for the rich, but the working class were getting some crumbs, and the rich decided, let's take those last few crumbs that they have too. And in order to do that, we must be much more heavy-handed in controlling them. The less the people get, the less they enjoyed the system, the less they benefited from the system, the more important it came to go from the velvet glove to the iron fist. So now, look, you didn't have to beat the people down much when they were benefiting from the system. Now that they're not benefiting from the system at all, you got to slam them mercilessly to the ground and say, look, and the people say, hey, we're not benefiting from the system. Shut up, or you will be crushed. Hey, you're changing things, and I want to have a say in it. Can I have a discussion? No, you can't be part. Can I be part of the discussion? No, you can't be part of the discussion. And if you try, you'll be thrown off social media. You'll be punished. You'll be economically sanctioned. Your bank account will be frozen. Everything bad's going to happen to you. And so the pushback is started. The meltdown is in real time, going fast, and we're going to sit here with a front seat view and watch it. Let me look and see. Someone said Musk wants to transhuman you. He wants to transhuman me? Oh, no. How about we go with Combate? Thanks a lot. We next go to Ivan B. Hunter's pardoned. Yeah, I'm going to talk about that a little bit later today. Oh, what a shock. Who didn't see that coming? Well, I thought we were told that no man's above the law. Remember that? No man's above the law. What about Hunter Biden? Yeah. All right, now we're going to look. Do we have new? I don't see new. I'm looking on Rumble for Rumble rants, and we're going to check on Rockfin to see. I'll be back on later, and we're going to talk about good old Hunter being pardoned, which is important, but not quite right now. Nothing on Rockfin. Okay, great. All right, guys. Yeah, we'll talk about Hunter being pardoned today. Again, that's part of neoliberalism, right? It's the lies. Good, good. I'm glad he's pardoned. That's exposes the reality of neoliberalism and the lies all along. We were told, look, no man's above the law. Trump has to be dealt with. If he violated the law, he must be held accountable. Oh my gosh, is Trump going to pardon himself? Remember this? Will Trump pardon himself? Will Trump pardon people? Blah, 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 blah. Here's the thing about it. I'll say this. They just opened the door for Trump to pardon anybody he wants. Look, I think Trump may pardon the January 6 people. When Joe Biden pardoned Hunter, he handed Donald Trump the keys to the city because he can go. Trump can just, why wouldn't Trump pardon himself now for anything? You pardon Hunter? Trump's going to pardon himself. If I were Trump, I would pardon. The first thing I'd do, I'd come in and I'd say, well, I know Joe Biden doesn't have any problem with me pardoning people because he pardoned his own freaking son. I would tell my people, bring me a list. I want it to look like the telephone book of people to pardon. I'm going to be signing pardons for the first 3 days I'm in. Pardon, 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 pardon. Everybody I know, everybody's dear to me, everybody from Russiagate, you name it. Everybody's getting pardoned. Why wouldn't he? All right, guys. Well, I'm going to get running. Thank you very much. Please make sure you share this on all your social media platforms. Make sure I'll be around later on today, probably have a guest on at some point. Got a few odds and ends to do, but the week has started and we're getting going again. And oh boy, I think Wednesday night I got Andre Martianoff and Scott Ritter back on again. Hooray. We're going to have some dear friends on, Caleb Maupin on, and Mark Sabota. Got to get him on this week. It's going to be a great week. But share this on all your social media platforms for those who can afford it. If you can, whether it's buy me a coffee, Cash App, all of that kind of stuff. If you can afford to Patreon or whatever, if you can afford to donate to the channel, that's great. If not, that's fine. Just share this on all your social media platforms. Peace. I'm out.